The Cleveland Browns currently have two first-round picks in the 2026 NFL Draft. So it got me to thinking over this long weekend, would there be a possibility that the Cleveland Browns could end up using one of those picks to better the roster for 2025? We'll talk about that and more on your latest Browns 3D on the OBR streaming network. Welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends, your daily delivery of all things Dog Pound Browns 3D on the OBR streaming network. I am your host, Jeff Lloyd, and from all of us here at the OBR, we appreciate you all who come out every day for your favorite Cleveland Browns coverage, whether it's the form of written content from our fantastic group of writers, or, of course, the OBR streaming network beginning every evening at 6 p.m. Eastern, closing in on 10,000 subscribers on YouTube. So if you haven't yet, please go ahead and subscribe over on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe over on Twitch as well. Just again, wanted to extend, hope everyone had a incredible 4th of July weekend. I think with any holiday, when it can be either the beginning of a weekend or the back end of a weekend, and you can turn it into a long weekend, certainly creates for, a lot more of an enjoyment of said holiday. And certainly that would be the case, of course, in summertime. Hope everybody had a safe and, happy 4th of July. Well, most people were enjoying the long weekend. And of course, we want to thank everybody for understanding for us shutting things down on Friday the 4th. Um, with the Browns holding two first-round picks in the 2026 NFL Draft, it kind of got me to pondering. And if you guys want to participate along, let's do that as well. My thought was, is there anything that could possibly surface between now and maybe even the trade deadline of a player becoming available and the Cleveland Browns deciding to use one of those first round picks ahead of next April's draft? Certainly, you would have to consider the quarterback position. And of course, quarterbacks and their contracts are extremely, extremely difficult to move. And with the way it's going to work for Cleveland, you have these two young quarterbacks, and the Browns can certainly wait it out till April. But by the time the trade deadline would come in the end of October, Cleveland would still be probably at a point where they don't necessarily have a long-term read on either Shedeur Sanders or Dylan Gabriel. So it certainly would be appealing if somehow, some way, there was a quarterback in a disgruntled situation who all of a sudden became available to the open market. It certainly would be, a coup for the Cleveland Browns if they were interested, as they possess what most teams would look for in moving on from a starting quarterback, and that would be a first-round pick. The running back position, I think we know one thing about the Cleveland Browns and the way they value the running back position. They appreciate the running back position. They don't maybe overvalue it. So I don't think the Cleveland Browns, the way they're currently constructed with Andrew Berry at the helm, would ever use a first-round pick on a running back, let alone trade a first-round pick on a running back. But again, if there are names at any of these positions that you guys think are feasible, go ahead, throw them in the comments, of course. Make sure you're liking, of course. And again, make sure you subscribe to the OBR over on YouTube. Now, you go to the wide receiver position. And, I'll use this name as an example because I don't see any way it would happen. But we all are understanding that Terry McLaurin is trying to get a second extension from the Washington Commanders, one that I feel he is rightfully deserving of. Certainly, if that does not come to fruition, I'm sure there's going to be a large amount of Cleveland Browns fans that would be more than willing to find a way to bring Mr. McLaurin, of course, to the building in Berea. That being said, I don't know if McLaurin's going to fit under the scope of what the Cleveland Browns would be willing to do. The Browns have had great success in trading for the wide receiver position. Amari Cooper. 2 years later, Jerry Jeudy. Both players went on to have record-breaking seasons with Cleveland. But both were acquired for essentially chump change on the dollar. So not saying the Browns wouldn't deem somebody worthy, but I don't think the Cleveland Browns would maybe surrender a first-round pick. Again, it could certainly happen, but would absolutely have to be the right wide receiver. And with the fact that it was a light draft class last year at the wide receiver position in 2025, and the early returns on the 2026 draft class are that it is going to be kind of light as well. Not sure any team is probably in the market for necessarily moving on from a top flight wide receiver. Now, here is one that could possibly maybe wet the whistle for the Browns. Say a left tackle became available that was worthy of a first round pick. We've had many talks about the state of the Cleveland Browns offensive line from where it is currently, from where it could possibly be when the season ends and we hit the offseason from the end of 25 to the beginning of 26. There is a legit possibility the Cleveland Browns could need 4, if not 5 new starting offensive linemen. Dwan Jones's 26 status certainly is going to be predicated on his play here in 2025. The Browns would love to find out whether or not Dwan Jones can truly find a way to prove to them that he could be. And I think they'd be happy, even if he was just an average starting left tackle. There also could be the possibility that, Dwan Jones, whatever he shows in 2025, Cleveland says that's fine. But maybe he's the starting right tackle in 2026 and Jack Conklin does not return. You have backup guards. You would never give up a pick for a guard. You would never give a first-round pick for a center. But if there was a left tackle that became available somehow, some way, I certainly believe that that is something that could happen. I think it's a little more logistic that it could happen that a left tackle would be available than certainly a quarterback would be available, right? But that would certainly be something that if somehow, some way, there was a situation with a left tackle, good left tackle for one of these teams at the right age, getting ready to maybe get that contract extension, that the Cleveland Browns would maybe forego one of those 2026 picks and get the offensive line rebuild started early. I, for one, was one, and you guys all know this. I sat here all off season, and I really, really thought the Cleveland Browns were going to commit something of significance to the edge position. And it wasn't a knock on Isaiah McGuire, because I think what you see from Isaiah McGuire, we all can agree has been pretty good. But I think Cleveland is going to give him the opportunity to prove that he can be even more. We know he's a great base run stopping defensive end. Pass rushing ability, we have not seen full-time starter pass rushing ability just yet. And I really thought that maybe was something that Cleveland would think to address somehow, some way. Cleveland threw a little bite to the position with Joe Tryon-Shanka. Alex Wright in the last year of his contract. Cam Thomas here, and not really talked about much, but Cam Thomas was definitely a darling of a mine coming out of San Diego State a few years ago. So certainly going to be something to monitor, for the Cleveland Browns. That would be also another spot where maybe you would look and, hey, if we can get a guy 24, 25 and where he's at, they're not going to commit to him. Certainly something the Cleveland Browns would entertain would be giving up a 2026 first-round draft choice for somebody they felt was a can't-miss defensive end, even if it meant, you were going to have a tougher time handling all the reps, as the Browns obviously feel Isaiah McGuire. should get the opportunity to be a full-time starter. A defensive tackle being worthy of one of the Browns' 2026 first-round picks, certainly possible. But the Browns right now obviously have the makings of what could be a really strong nucleus for a few years here on the interior part of their defensive line. Certainly, sky is the limit as far as hopes of what you think Mason Graham's going to be able to bring this team. Plus run defender. Certainly hoping that we are going to see his pass rush mature as the player matures. Certainly have high hopes for Mike Hall. Juwan Briggs was a player that, we screamed should have been on the field earlier in 2024. The Browns finally broke the glass and got him on the field, and certainly found a guy that was certainly playing above his 7th round selection that was used upon him. So we know the Browns would commit a first-round pick to a defensive tackle, but I doubt the Cleveland Browns would commit 2 first-round picks to a defensive tackle in such a short period of time. The linebacker position. Nope. The Cleveland Browns, in no way whatsoever, would commit a first-round pick to the linebacker position. As we've seen to this point, this regime has given 2 second-round picks to linebackers, Carson Schlesinger and previously Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. But no, in no way, shape, or form would this franchise ever give a first-round pick to a linebacker. Corner's interesting. Certainly you have Denzel entrenched here. Top of the food chain at the position on your roster. One of the best players on your roster. But you have Greg Newsome and you have Martin Emerson, both in contract years. Certainly both were playing very well in 2023. Both in 2024 compared to 2023 underperformed. Is there a corner out there available? Would there be a corner out there available for the Cleveland Browns to give up one of their number 1 picks in the 2026 draft for? He'd have to be relatively young, because the thought process obviously would be in giving up this first-round pick for this potential corner, that this guy would eventually go on to be the number 1 in the room once Denzel Ward moves on. Certainly interesting. The safety position. Now, again, I believe the safety position is not something the Cleveland Browns would spend a first-round pick on ever. I just don't believe they view the position, and we can go back for all the years now that, Andrew Berry's been running this franchise, and the highest commitment to a safety was Grant Talbot. They tried a couple of free agent deals. Obviously, those both flamed out extremely quickly. So I don't think the Browns value the safety position in a way that would necessarily warrant, even if it was Kyle Hamilton that became available, which he would never get traded from the Ravens to the Browns, of course. But the Cleveland Browns, in my opinion, would just not value a safety high enough to give up a first-round pick. So basically, if the Cleveland Browns wanted to entertain and something became available, some great player, it would have to be a premium position. And for the Cleveland Browns, that would be the quarterback position, possibly a wide receiver, certainly a left tackle, most likely an edge would fall into that realm for the Cleveland Browns, and perhaps the cornerback position. You never know. Something could happen. Somebody somewhere could be in the hopes of negotiating their big fat contract extension, and talks don't go anywhere. And the team that holds said player realizes, well, we better get rid of him and get something for him before he goes away and we get nothing. But it was just something I was, pondering over the long weekend about the Browns and whether or not we can just assume that those 2 first-round picks coming up next April are both going to be kept by the Browns, and whether or not the possibility was they could use one of them to trade for an established player. Again, feel free in the comments to leave comments regarding certain players that you would think or deem worthy of the Cleveland Browns giving up one of their 2026 first round picks. Again, appreciate everybody for following us along here at the OBR. Hope you all had a fantastic 4th of July weekend. One of the other things, we take a little time off. We get to refresh the brain, perhaps. I think we all believe that come the opening week 1 roster, it will consist of Joe Flacco or Kenny Pickett, and both Shedeur Sanders and Dylan Gabriel. Now, kind of thinking back to what the Browns have done in past training camps, past summers, I don't think, nor would I be surprised if somewhere between now and July 24th, so essentially 17 days from today, that the Cleveland Browns very well might sign yet another veteran quarterback. And my thinking is the veteran quarterback would not be on par probably with a Pickett or certainly with a Joe Flacco. This might be more of a veteran quarterback who can possibly take some snaps in the preseason, because I think right now the only people that are going to take snaps in the preseason would be Pickett, unless they feel that Flacco has passed him that quickly. And then, of course, Shedeur Sanders and Dylan Gabriel. But if Joe Flacco, because I think that's just the way it's going to go, is the starting quarterback for this team week 1, and again, who knows how long it'll go, then my question would be is who's going to be like the veteran presence, the veteran guy in the film room, the guy who's, going to aid and assist Shedeur Sanders and Dylan Gabriel on what hopefully would be the path for either one of those guys to supplant Joe Flacco quickly and maybe play so well that the Cleveland Browns decide they do not need to use one of the 2 2026 first-round picks on a quarterback. So I think there's a very good chance the Cleveland Browns will sign one more veteran quarterback, with the total thought process being that he will most likely go to the practice squad. Perhaps no hope of playing, sadly for said veteran quarterback. But if it were Joe or Kenny, and the thing with Joe or Kenny is if it's not going to be Joe Flacco or it's not going to be Kenny Pickett, neither one of them are going to go to the practice squad. Joe could very well say, hey, I'm good. I'm done. Forget it. Pickett could find a home on a 53-man roster. No question about it, of course. I'm not saying Joe couldn't, but I'm just saying certainly for Joe, there's different circumstances involved. So Cleveland, in my opinion, is probably still on the market for one more quarterback. And again, that thought process would be for, essentially not even playing, but being the practice squad quarterback, because you can't risk Sanders or Gabriel. You've got to put these guys through waivers first before they can get to your practice squad. And if you put Shedeur Sanders or you put Dylan Gabriel out on the open market, you 110% are not getting them back. You're not practice squatting a Dylan Gabriel. You're not practice squatting a Shedeur Sanders. There's just no way in the world. I'm thinking more, the Josh Dobbses of the world, Those types. The Case Keenums of the world. Those types. Certainly nobody that was going to come in here with any serious threat to be the starting quarterback for the Browns. Unless it's week 18, right? Because God knows. We probably don't even know wherever he even is right now who most likely would be the week 18 starting quarterback for the Cleveland Browns. But just something else with a long weekend and, you try to get yourself out of it, man. You try to recharge your batteries, just have a little fun. And, what you do just seems to. So some thoughts I certainly had on the Cleveland Browns over the long weekend. Third one I came across, and this, I'm going to be honest. This one certainly, and you want to see things that are like the direct result, right? And we know, obviously, the Browns lost the opportunity at so much young talent in the Deshaun Watson trade. And I don't care that he got married. I don't care how much his wedding band costs, whatever. Yeah, please, no more, no more, no more. But this list is from the Check the Mic podcast, and it is the top 25 players under the age of 25. Don't be surprised. No, there is not a Cleveland Brown on this list. But if you would like to know why the good teams in the NFL are good and are really good, it's usually because of lists like this. Houston Texans, 3 players in the top 25 of players under the age of 25. Derek Stingley, Will Anderson, Browns trade for Deshaun Watson, and CJ Stroud. That's why they're a good team. Hit on your money draft picks, and ideally, you will be a good team. Philadelphia Eagles, 2 players on this list. Defensive tackle Jalen Carter, cornerback Quinyon Mitchell. Detroit Lions, and this one stuns me. Penei Sewell, still 25 or younger. And also safety, Brian Branch. Jaden Daniels on this list, of course. Huge season in changing the view and the belief and the outlook of the entire Washington Commanders roster. Rams are a pretty good team, right? Well, Puka Nacua, Jared Verse, both under 25. Chargers, Joe Alt and Lad McConkey. 2 incredible pieces of their offense. And I do apologize. Also from the Detroit Lions, Jahmyr Gibbs, 25 and younger. So one of the leading interceptors in the NFL, a top offensive lineman, and of course, one of the best running backs in the NFL. Chiefs sneak a player on here with Trent McDuffie. One of the more interesting ones, and there are some teams whose fortunes maybe are turning up. Christian Gonzalez on this list from the Patriots. Drake London from the Falcons. Bijan Robinson also from the Falcons. Brock Bowers. You want a team maybe on the level of Cleveland. Brian Thomas Jr. from the Jacksonville Jaguars on this list. Seahawks represented with Jackson Smith and Jigba. Cardinals, Marvin Harrison Jr. A lot of Buckeyes. A lot of Buckeyes on this list. Malik Neighbors on this list. But you kind of get the idea. And this is obviously one of the reasons where the Cleveland Browns roster is where it's currently at. You don't get to make these premium picks because you traded them it certainly hurts you and hurts you badly. And the worst thing is having these high picks. And obviously, the Browns didn't have a chance to fail on these high picks because they didn't obviously have the opportunity to even make them. But you see just what top 5, top 10, top 15 picks and what the expectation is from these guys. So that's why having 3 years of no first round picks, 1 second round pick in a 3-year span, you see how that cripples the outlook of a team. And of these top 25, 25 or under, first round pick, first round pick, first round pick, first round pick, first round, 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 first. There are 2 players who were not first round picks that are on this list. And that is, of course, Puka Nacua. And of course, Lad McConkey. Puka was a day 3 guy, and the Rams absolutely crushed it. McConkey, I think there was a little biased just because just didn't have the size necessarily. But you're not going to tell me for 1 second that Lad McConkey did not look like a first-round pick last year playing for the Chargers. And outside of Justin Herbert, very well could be their best offensive player if you're not going to count the 2 disgustingly talented offensive tackles that the Chargers have on their roster. But the point of this is the expectation, right? Next year, you're hoping to hear that a Mike Hall or a Mason Graham, a Quinshon Judkins, a Carson Swessinger, that the Browns had a huge hit on some of these draft choices from the 2025 class. Because those guys, and it's not a knock on the Myles Garretts and the Denzel Wards of the world, they do it week in, week out, season in, season out. The point is to try to get more of them. They can't do things alone. They need help. Need people around them. If you want to list things that we can talk about now and maybe go back to in January and say, what are some of the realistic hopes and fruition from this 2025 season for the Cleveland Browns? I think one of them would be, where is this offensive line at come January? You've got Myles, obviously a first ballot Hall of Famer. Is McGuire developed to where you think he's a legit full-time starter, to the point where Cleveland might consider giving him a contract extension because this is year 3 or 4? To the interior nucleus of Graham, Mike Hall, and Juwan Briggs all of a sudden make the interior of that defensive line for the Cleveland Browns something that's legitimate, lasting, sustainable, a team strength. That is one of the biggest things you're going to look at the end of this season for the Cleveland Browns and start determining wins and losses for the team overall, not score. The team improving, hopefully vastly improving from where they were when this season began. That's one of the things you're looking for. Because if you get to the point where you have Garrett, McGuire improves, Graham was all that, and then some, Hall is what you thought he was, Briggs is more than you thought he was, all of a sudden, you've got a tremendous top 5 of your defensive line. That's a legit goal. That's a potential legit strength. Got to a lot here today. Pondered whether or not the Cleveland Browns could possibly find something that would get them to use one of those first-round picks in 2026 before the draft. I think the Cleveland Browns are going to add one more quarterback by the time training camp begins. And the hopes would be he will be the veteran that takes over when it becomes not Joe Flacco or Kenny Pickett, and one of those two guys are moved on from, and he will end up being a practice squad guy. And the top 25 players in the NFL, 25 or younger, and how next year the Cleveland Browns should hopefully strive to have a couple of names on this same list. I'm Jeff Lloyd. All of us here at the OBR appreciate everything you guys give us, coming out for the written content from our fantastic group of writers, joining us every evening at 6 p.m. Eastern on the OBR streaming network. Available on YouTube, so subscribe. Available on Twitch, so go subscribe. We're getting close, kids. July 22nd, 15 days from today, the rookies will report to training camp, and on July 24th, the veterans will be right behind them. This has been your daily delivery of all things Dog Pound Browns 3D on the OBR streaming network, and we will talk to y'all tomorrow.